in this video. I'm excited to be sharing my thoughts on the new-ish Backun Alpha Plus clarinet. My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at QuickStartClarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos. Before we get into playing it and trying it out, I do want to say that this is not a sponsored video. I'm not being paid to give my thoughts or provide positive feedback on this instrument. They did send it to me to try out for free, so that's very exciting, and I'm very grateful to Backun. But these are my honest, unadulterated thoughts on the Backun Alpha Plus. Now, with the disclaimers out of the way, I think the best thing to do would just be to start by playing it, so you can sort of hear how it sounds before you get any biased thoughts on how I feel playing it. So I'll play a little bit first, and then we'll get into how I feel about it and what I think of this clarinet. So there's a good 3-octave F major scale, some noodling around just to get a feel for how this clarinet sounds when I'm playing it. And now to talk about how I feel, which is so much more important than how it sounds when it comes to equipment always. I think as a general rule, when you get new equipment and try different equipment, you're gonna sound pretty much the same as you normally sound. Yes, there will be a little difference, but especially over time, I think that difference will become smaller and smaller and smaller. So in general, I always recommend when it comes to testing equipment and picking out new equipment to go for what feels the best, not necessarily what sounds the best. Yes, you want to sound good, of course, but I believe over time, you're going to figure out what you need to do to make the equipment sound the way that you want. And then finding equipment that feels as easy as possible to sound the way that you want is the way to go. So how I feel playing the Backun Alpha Plus, I really like it quite a bit. This is an interesting instrument because it's sort of aimed at as an intermediate instrument, and especially at the price point, I really like it as a strong contender for intermediate instruments. The problem with the sort of intermediate market I find lately is that it feels overinflated. If you're gonna buy an intermediate wooden instrument like a Buffet E11 or something like that, you might as well just go for the professional instrument at that point, because a lot of intermediate instruments now are over $2,000. This one coming in at the time of filming is $1,596 is what it's available for on Sweetwater, and I believe at Music and Arts it is the same price as well. The price will fluctuate, of course, but at around $1,600, this feels like a true intermediate instrument, and it would be worthwhile to go for something like this rather than like $3,000 or more for something like a Buffet R13, which is sort of the standard of professional instruments and a lot of people's first professional instruments. I'm most familiar with Buffet because that's what I've always played on, so that's why I'm sort of comparing to them, but really whatever brand that you're looking at, it's kind of a similar situation. So at $1,600, this is a really interesting intermediate contender. It is made out of wood. It's a Grenadilla clarinet, so just like any professional model instrument, it's made out of the same material. The keywork feels fantastic. It has this sort of Backun ergonomic keywork. I think whenever I try the different brands of instruments, I feel like they kind of each have their own feel to them, and I feel like Backun tries to make it very ergonomic, very easy for your fingers to move around. There's high quality pads on it. It comes from the factory ready to play and sounding great. So this is a really solid option in that sort of intermediate realm. And before we dive too much into the nuances of my thoughts on the clarinet, I should mention the other equipment that I'm playing on it. So it's the stock barrel and bell that come with the Alpha Plus. The mouthpiece is my normal mouthpiece, which is a Ramon Wadkowski Model 1. My reed is my normal reeds and ligature, D'Addario Reserve Evolution Strength 4, and then the gold Bonad inverted ligature. So this is my normal mouthpiece setup. This is maybe a little bit nicer mouthpiece, a more professional level mouthpiece than you might expect to normally play on the Alpha Plus. I did try it with a few other mouthpieces, and it feels good with those mouthpieces. It's also interesting, just as a side note, I think changing mouthpieces almost felt more different than changing the clarinet, which I do think makes decent sense. I think the reed actually is the most important piece of equipment, and then the mouthpiece is a close second, and then the clarinet after that. So getting a good mouthpiece is always great, and this instrument felt quite good with my good mouthpiece as well. Now let's get into a little bit more specifics and nuances about the Backun Alpha Plus. When it comes to trying equipment and trying clarinets, I recently, sort of for this video, came up with a bit of a scoring system that's just sort of personal to me and intuitive, covering some of the important topics of the instrument and important qualities that we're looking for in good equipment. Big disclaimer, I'm giving these number ratings, but these numbers, even though they look objective, are entirely subjective. These are my subjective ratings based on how I feel playing this instrument today and through my testing. You may feel completely different. Somebody else may feel completely different. The numbers sort of just give it a way to give you a bit of an objective idea or ballpark, but remember, even though they look very objective, it's still completely subjective, and how you feel about it may be completely different. But looking at the categories in the chart, I'm going to start off with tone. Now, tone is a tricky one because, like I said, you're going to get used to how the clarinet feels and how the equipment feels. So you're probably going to pretty much get the same tone that you're used to getting over time, especially. Maybe at the first try, it'll feel different and you'll feel like the sound is different, but over about a month, it's going to settle into how you normally sound. In general, the overall tone that I'm getting from this instrument, without having spent a whole month getting used to it, I did play it for a few weeks, several different times to really get my thoughts on it over more than just one playing period. But my general thoughts on the tone is it's a pretty dark tone. It has a good focus to it, and is maybe a tiny bit on the stuffy side. I gave it overall an 84 for tone. I think it's absolutely solid, and again, I think I would sound quite good and like myself on this instrument in about a month or so. Now, when it comes to tone, I also sort of broke that down into two subcategories that have more to do with the feeling of the tone, and I think those are much more important and much more interesting when it comes to the feel of playing rather than just the sound that I think is going to settle out in a month or so. So the consistency is the first one, and what the consistency means is just from note to note, from register to register, how does it feel to play, and how do I feel like the notes are matching each other? Even though the tone overall and the sound quality will be how I normally feel, if the instrument has like a particularly bright, like G sharp or C sharp or really stuffy throat tones, that's something that you'll always be fighting with no matter how used to the instrument you get. And that's what consistency is tackling. The Backun Alpha Plus, fantastically consistent, feels really great all across the registers from note to note. It's really nice on the consistency, and I gave it a 90 out of 100 for consistency. Now, the other tone subcategory is the flexibility. What I mean by flexibility is the ability to get sort of different colors to the sound and the ability to shift dynamics and things like that and be able to really express yourself through the sound and really have that nuance and color to the sound that you want. Now for flexibility, I think this instrument is not quite as good. I think that's one of its weaknesses. So for flexibility, I gave it an 80. It's still pretty good. It still sounds good. You're still able to sort of move around, but I think right around that B area at 80 out of 100, I think makes sense for how this flexibility feels. And I think that also makes sense for an intermediate instrument, because with student and intermediate instruments, you want something that's sort of focusing the player in and sort of guiding them along a specific path, sort of, so that they can't get too wild with the flexibility of the sound. So I think it makes sense for this instrument. I also think that's a little bit of a sort of Backun quality as well, where they're going for really, really great consistency and steadiness. And I think sometimes maybe you sacrifice flexibility a little bit for great consistency. That being said, I've tried briefly some of their professional instruments and do really like the flexibility on those. So it might be an intentional sort of intermediate thing, which I think makes perfect sense. The next category is intonation. Absolutely like mind-blowingly good intonation on this instrument. It was super easy to play all of the notes in tune at comfortable dynamics and even shifting dynamics and at the extremes. This instrument's really easy to play in tune. And with intonation, it's not just when I play it straight, how good is it in tune, because that could be all over the place. And it is important when you're just playing without thinking about it, that it lands pretty well in tune. And this does that pretty well. But also with intonation, it's really important to know the flexibility of intonation. So this instrument's maybe not the most flexible on the sound quality side, but the flexibility of intonation is really quite easy to get it really well and in tune. So intonation, I gave it a 94, which is really, really good. Next category is the response. And what I'm thinking of for the response is when you change notes or change registers and things like that, how easily does it do that and how confidently does it do that? I think this instrument does it very well, very responsive, crossing the break, no problem, crossing into the altissimo, no problem. It's a very responsive instrument. There were times here and there across very big leaps that there was a little bit of funkiness happening that didn't feel totally perfect and smooth. So I'm knocking off a few points. It's not perfect for a response, but it is very, very good. So I went with an 86 for the responsiveness. So you can see overall on the big criteria to judge a clarinet by, I think the Backun Alpha Plus does a fantastic job. Averaging it out, it's a solid B, which I think makes perfect sense for the price point and the idea of an intermediate clarinet. I think it should be right around there. Just as a point of comparison, these are the scores for my normal setup, which is the Buffet Tradition, which is significantly more expensive than this instrument. The Buffet Tradition averages out to right around an A-. So I think that these being so close in general feel and score is a really good sign that this is a fantastic deal at the price point that it is at. Now, a few other points of consideration and just some sort of fussy things that I noticed about it. The keywork is really fantastic, really solid quality. Everything about it feels really high quality. It says on a few places on it, it says designed in Canada, manufactured in China. And from my understanding and my communications with Backun, these get entirely manufactured in China and then shipped to distributors. But the quality is fantastic. Don't let the fact that it's made in China and put together in China be concerning. I feel really solid about the quality of the instrument, and again, coming from the factory, it played pretty well. There was one little issue that I had, and this is just a little bit of a gripe in general. On the bridge key, which I don't think will be possible to see on video, but on the bridge key, there aren't any lines for how to line it up. If you can see, maybe, on my tradition, there are those little lines, and those help with lining it up. It's not the end all be all, but especially on a more intermediate and more student level instrument, I would like to see those lines there just to help them figure out how to line it up. Maybe you could make the argument that you don't want the lines there because then you just line it up with the lines and then you're not actually sure if the pads are in line. But also for a beginner not knowing what they're doing, I think it would be helpful. And I did have some problems with the bridge key alignment. Once I got it dialed in, it was good and worked, but I was having issues with this key and this pad not closing completely all the way without tweaking it just right, and it wasn't totally intuitive where just right was for that. That is a small repair that could be done really easily to make that more intuitive, but that was just one little issue that I had. A way that you can test that out, just as a quick repair side note, if you're trying to play the low B flat, and if you just be really gentle with your fingers and now it's coming out, no problem. But if I tweak that bridge key a little bit and change just the twisting, I'm not like bending a key or anything, I'm just twisting the clarinet differently, and then press that very light. You can hear it doesn't want to come out until I press more firmly. So that's something that's really picky, and if you don't know what you're looking for, you could get really frustrated having problems with the instrument. I don't know, I don't think that's a manufacturing issue or a design issue necessarily. I think it could just be this particular one just needs to be adjusted ever so slightly. And again, that's an easy repair, so I'm not too concerned about that. Other things, the thumb rest is really great, comes with a hook for a neck strap. It's easily adjustable. I like how the Backun thumb rests are a little bit bigger as well, so even without a pad or a cushion or anything, it feels pretty solid to hold on to that there. So I think those are the general things about the Backun Alpha Plus, the little picky things, my general feel of it. Hopefully this has been helpful to give you some ideas about what this clarinet is. I think if you are looking for affordable but high quality wooden instrument that can sound really great, plays really well, but you don't want to spend over $2,000, I think this is a great fit for something like that. It's a perfect sort of first upgrade. It might even be a solid choice as a very first clarinet in general. So it's a great option, and the price, I think, honestly, is the best part about this instrument because it is really good quality for a really good price, which means that the value is absolutely there. Now, if you want to get one of these, you can't get them from Backun's website, but I do have a link in the description to Sweetwater where you can get it. Just a disclaimer, that is an affiliate link, so it will support the channel a little bit if you end up purchasing a Backun Alpha Plus through Sweetwater. But that's there for you. You can also find it at Music and Arts and any other dealer. You can also go to Backun's website and find a dealer through the Backun website as well for wherever you may be in the world. But overall, I really love the value of the Alpha Plus. I hope that you found this review helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'd be happy to provide any further thoughts that you're interested in on this instrument. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in another one. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the QuickStart Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.